important. We are. It don't look like it.
I never called any attention. Bye.
You're not going anywhere.
Neither am I.
Well then, shut up. Shut the hell up.
No, I would not shut the hell up. No, I won't. No, I would not. I would not shut the hell up. And you will not tell me to be quiet. Excuse me. You should just message.
Do you feel like immigrants are taking our jobs, or just that it's illegal and we need to take care of it?
Taking our jobs and they're killing our economy.
You have to wipe out their homes where they came from. You have to absolutely wipe them out. It's the only way you're going to stop terrorism.
USA! USA! USA!
Are you in favor of bombing terrorist homes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. People will continue to reproduce and they will raise children in their beliefs.
Bible verse! Bible verse. What's your favorite? It's 1 Timothy 3, 1-7. Okay, it is noble to seek the office of overseer. However, he who does should be above reproach, sober-minded, not quarrelsome, only married once, and not a great lover of money.
Oh, boy. Am I in trouble?
What say you? I just wanted to ask a question. I was assaulted. Shit. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? Get off me! Get off me! Come on! What are you doing?
Outside.
Come on! I just wanted to ask a...
WikiLeaks posted more than 2,000 additional emails.
National Security Advisor Michael Flynn forced to resign.
Once again, questions are being asked about one of Donald Trump's key appointments. Once again, it's all to do with Russia.
We know, based on the findings of U.S. intelligence agencies, that Russia interfered in the 2016 election, and they did so in order to help Trump win. What we don't know is if and to what extent President Trump and his associates colluded with them in trying to damage our democracy.
What did the president know, and when did he know it?
See, for Russia, having a friend in the White House is worth way more than just the billions of dollars they're losing from U.S. sanctions.
Russia would like to have the return of its great power status. What Russia has been trying to do for many, many years through a series of acts of intimidation is undermine the West, undermine what it stands for, undermine the institutions that it has spent 70 years creating, to call into question the value set that we worked so hard to protect and promote.
So what do we actually know? There are several people directly connected to Trump who also have suspicious ties to the Kremlin. Let's start with Roger Stone. Stone is a longtime friend of Trump and was an advisor to his campaign early on. In June, Russian hacker Guccifer 2.0 tweeted confidential DNC documents, part of what intelligence agencies refer to when they say that Russia interfered in the US election. Stone was in contact with the Twitter account after the hacking, a quote-unquote innocuous conversation that he forgot. Then, Stone began threatening Clinton's campaign on Twitter. Notice the hashtag? Days later,
WikiLeaks has posted thousands of emails hacked from Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman.
Tens of thousands of them throughout October.
The point of it was to get these documents into the public realm, and WikiLeaks was a perfect tool. It's clear that they were instruments of Russian intelligence.
And Stone himself says he's connected.
I actually have communicated with Assange.
The FBI is investigating Stone. Then there's Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign manager over the summer. During his tenure on the campaign, Manafort came under fire for his lobbying work for pro-Russian entities in Ukraine.
The pro-Russia political party set aside millions in undisclosed cash payments designated for Paul Manafort.
The controversy forced Manafort to resign. Months later, the New York Times reported that the FBI had intercepted calls between Manafort and the Kremlin. And then,
new revelation that Manafort worked for Russian billionaire Oleg Deripaska, alleged to have secretly promoted Russian President Vladimir Putin's agenda, with Manafort making millions.
The FBI is investigating Manafort. And that gets us to Michael Flynn. You may remember Trump's former national security advisor? During the campaign, Flynn was Trump's top military aide, despite a 2015 speaking engagement in Moscow, where state-owned media company Russia Today paid Flynn to celebrate their 10th anniversary.
It's one thing to be invited to the celebratory dinner of the 10th anniversary of RT, a scurrilous propaganda arm of the Russian government. But for him to think that as a retired eminence in the world of American intelligence, he could go and participate in a party for RT is really is really beyond belief.
Fast forward to the month before Trump took office, the same day that then President Obama announced new sanctions against Russia for meddling in our elections. Flynn spoke to Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak about lifting U.S. sanctions.
If the administration lifted the sanctions that Obama layered on at the end of 2016, we would essentially be sending a signal to Putin that we don't mind that Russia actively interfered in our election. We would essentially be giving him carte blanche to do that again in the future as early as 2020.
First, Flynn denied the allegations, and Vice President Pence stood by him.
It was strictly coincidental.
Then,
Flynn conceding that he inadvertently briefed the vice president-elect and others with incomplete information.
Officials say Michael Flynn lied to the FBI.
He's still under investigation.
Given the state of our relationship and the fact that we knew about the DNC hacking and there was evidence that Russia was responsible for that, I would have personally advised anyone on the Trump transition team not to meet with any Russian officials.
On February 13th, Flynn resigned. It's worth noting that Flynn isn't the only Trump associate who privately met with Kislyak. Here are the other ones that we know about. Then Senator Jeff Sessions, a campaign surrogate, and Trump's current Attorney General. We'll get to those meetings in a moment. Carter Page, a foreign policy advisor to the campaign, also under investigation. J.D. Gordon, the campaign's national security policy representative for the RNC. And Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor. While these connections were being made behind the scenes, Trump was making things worse for himself, in part by openly praising Putin on the campaign trail.
Putin's a confident guy, smart guy. They say he killed reporters. I said, really? He says he didn't. Other people say he didn't. Who did he kill?
Putin did call me a genius, and he said I'm the future of the Republican Party. So.
If he says great things about me, I'm going to say great things about him.
Simultaneously, a former British spy began building a dossier on Trump's alleged ties to Russia, which became public in January. According to this dossier, the Russians might have a lot of compromising material, or as the Russians call it, compromat, on Trump.
This is CNN Breaking News.
For the first time, U.S. investigators say that they have corroborated some of the communications.
But most of it remains unverified. Meanwhile, Trump isn't interested in investigating Russia's role in the election.
He shouldn't be doing it. He won't be doing it. Russia will have much greater respect for our country when I'm leading it than when other people have led it.
And the White House has been scrambling to deny the media reports of frequent communication between Trump's campaign advisors and the Kremlin. Trump's chief of staff asked the FBI to squelch these reports, potentially obstruction of justice.
Let's assume for a minute that the White House was trying to exert pressure on the FBI to shape the ongoing investigations in one way or another. That is absolutely outrageous and not at all in line with how our government functions and is inappropriate.
So what's being done about all of this? U.S. agencies are conducting multiple investigations.
I can promise you we will follow the facts wherever they lead.
But remember, the FBI is controlled by the Department of Justice, and Trump loyalist Jeff Sessions commands the DOJ. During his confirmation hearing, Sessions was asked how he would handle investigating ties between Trump associates and the Kremlin.
I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians.
And yet, as the Washington Post revealed, Sessions met with Kislyak twice.
My sense is that the Russians knew that Sessions was acting as a surrogate and was a strong Trump supporter. And they probably also knew that he had a chance at receiving a high-ranking position in the Trump administration or being appointed. So their motivations are clear. What's not clear to me is what the motivations were of the individuals that were serving on the Trump transition team.
Sessions has since recused himself from the DOJ investigation, but that doesn't change the fact that the investigation will ultimately be overseen by somebody who works for Trump. Then there are the investigations in the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, both led by Trump-friendly Republicans. Senate Intel Committee Chair Richard Burr served as a national security advisor to Trump's campaign.
There's not a separation between me and Donald Trump.
And Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Representative Devin Nunes, helped lead Trump's transition team.
The only serious crimes we have are leaks that have come out of our government to the press and others.
Did I mention the White House asked Burr and Nunes to publicly denounce reports of communication between Trump's associates and the Kremlin? Yeah, Burr and Nunes actually called reporters.
Intelligence agencies and the investigatory committees in Congress are both supposed to be completely independent of the White House on a matter like this and investigating the White House on a matter like this. But apparently, they're all working for the White House and trying to make the bad press on this go away.
If we had a separate commission handling this, I would sleep better at night because it would remove this from any influence of the White House and put it in the public eye.
Demands for an independent review are gaining steam, but that fight isn't shaping up to be easy.
Members of Congress pursue investigations that could harm their own president only if they're under a lot of pressure, and where it seems that they are going to be embarrassed if they do nothing.
But without an independent review, we may never know the truth about Trump's alleged ties to Russia.
All of us, irrespective of political party, should be deeply concerned when another country tries to directly interfere in our election. And so let's know what happened and let's arm ourselves to protect ourselves next time they try.
America has just dropped the largest ever non-nuclear bomb on Islamic State targets in Afghanistan. A 21,000 LB weapon dubbed as the mother of all bombs was dropped in Afghanistan's Nangarhar province. This according to Pentagon. And the blast radius is believed to be over 300 meters and the weapon is described as the father of all bombs. These are inputs coming to us according to reports from Pentagon, and it's the very first time that this weapon has ever been used in combat.
What somebody like Donald Trump is doing is playing on the fears and anxieties of the American people. And people are afraid. They're afraid of terrorism, rightfully so. They're anxious about an economy in which the middle class is disappearing. We're seeing massive levels of income and wealth inequality. People are worried about the future for their kids. These are legitimate fears. So instead of having a rational discussion about how we rebuild the middle class, how we deal with Wall Street, how we have a tax system in which the wealthy and powerful start paying their fair share of taxes, what Trump is saying is it's all the Muslims' fault. It's all the Mexicans' fault.
How do you explain why that's doing so well right now?
Because it's an easy solution. How do we rebuild the middle class? Well, you're going to have to stand up to corporate America. You're going to have to stand up to Wall Street. You're going to have to create millions of decent paying jobs by rebuilding our infrastructure. You're going to have to provide health care to all people, et cetera, et cetera. But what Trump says, and this is new, this is what demagogues all over the world historically have done. They say, are you nervous? Are you scared? Are you frightened for the future? I'll tell you the reason. It's the Muslims. All those Muslims out there are terrorists. We have to stop them coming into this country. It's the Mexicans. It's the immigrants who are coming in. They're all rapists and criminals. Oh, okay. Now I'm angry. We're going to take it out on them. Meanwhile, this same Trump says the minimum wage in America, which is $7.25 an hour, he says it's good that we have a low minimum wage. This guy Trump is saying we need to give hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to the top 0.3%, the very richest people in this country. How do you
defeat that?
You defeat it by going out to the working people in this country and making it clear that if we are going to create an economy that works for our kids, that works for working families, we have got to do it together. We have to understand the real causes, and the real causes are the greed of corporate America, the greed of Wall Street, not some...
Black women in history, by saying that The fact that we are discussing her separate from black men proves that discussion is out of order and we are outside of the cultural container of our original development. If we were within the cultural container of our original development, we would not discuss her out of context with discussing the man. Because no more than we would discuss one half of a peach or one half of an orange without consideration of the other half. We're not talking about one thing dependent on the other thing. We're talking about something that balances the other thing and makes it whole. We're not talking about someone's better half. We're talking about the other half that gives balance and meaning to the other half to create a whole. We came out of a cultural incubator that said this, did not preach it, created no dogma around it, did not formalize it with a whole lot of literature, but wisely arrived at the conclusion in relationship to it and lived it out. Because we did not create massive literature around it, the assumption is we did not know it, but we knew it so well we did not have to proclaim it in dogma, in literature, and inasmuch as we were living it out, we understood that the role of the woman, while being different, was equal in importance, and there were times when the role of the woman and the role of the man was one and the same. There were times when we recognized the woman as the life giver. Then as the life giver, we recognize that role as being over and above something that man could do. And in turn, woman recognized the man as the planter of the seed and the carrier of the seed through which life emerged. But she fertilized the seed and nurtured it into a human being and shaped the human being. No one had to debate this. The debate over the role of women, the categories of man and woman, the creation of confusion about relationship between mother, father, mother, son, came out of Western sociology and psychiatry, mostly middle-class Jews of Central Europe. Because we do not look as well as we need to behind the history curtain, behind the slavery curtain. We forget that history is being interpreted through the lens of people who were from the beginning afraid of the woman in power. While the African was not only relaxed with her in power, permitted her to go as far as her mind could take her without feeling the slightest insecurity. But in a society of plenty, in a society where land was enough, water was enough, women was enough, he could feel secure. The European who imposed his will and created a literature containing a protracted rationale was afraid of a woman in power, and so he created for his women the same kind of rationale to justify his domination over her as he created to justify his domination over non-European women. In other words, what has happened with the European everywhere he has gone in the world is a process that can crudely be called niggerization. Having reduced most of the world to the process and the status of niggerization, he reduced his women to the same status. Now, because the African did not have to do this, he had a different attitude. And the African today, in his relationship to women, has some of the same faults as the European he's imitating. In fact, the great drawback is the African with these faults. And the one in the Western world have added to these faults by being an imitator. This is why I have repeatedly brought up a lecture I gave a few years ago, some meat-clad sorority women, on the historical origins of black teenage pregnancy. When I looked at the historical origins of black teenage pregnancy, and they came there to hear me crucify the black man, and I'd even mention one, because he had nothing to do with black teenage pregnancy historically. And there was no record of any black teenage pregnancy existing in his society before the coming of foreigners. There was no record of deserting women before the coming of foreigners. And so therefore, every foreigner that came into the society that he had fashioned engaged in a form of cultural pollution. When he gained, after this cultural pollution, the African, under the power of the foreigner, thinking that the only way to survive is to imitate the foreigner. Now,